Hey guys, so with the patch 0.3 Abyssal League coming to an end in a couple of weeks, I wanted to take the time to highlight my top 5 favorite builds of the league, just in case you might have missed them, or maybe you want to go and do kind of like a last hurrah build before the end of the league. This could also maybe inspire you for some league starter ideas for patch 0.4, because I think a couple of these are actually not going to be touched going into the new league. So maybe this can give you some inspiration for those build ideas that are kind of churning inside of your head the moment that we start getting some more information about what's to come in the new update. So hopefully you guys enjoy this build, and without further ado, let's get right into it. After this word from our sponsor. If you haven't heard the news, then you have to be living under a rock, because Raid Shadow Legends is bringing back the Ultimate Death Knight in the Ultimate Death Knight update, and new players can get him right now for completely free using the promo code UDKING. So why is this a big deal? Well, I'm glad you asked, because the Ultimate Death Knight is a free legendary unit, which basically never happens, and he is an absolute beast. He is one of the best tanks in the game and can take hits like a champ. And on top of that, he can also shield and heal your entire team as well. And if you're a gacha game aficionado like me, you probably know that these types of units are the backbone to any good team. And best of all, he's good in both PvP and PvE and can solo carry any team while providing the much needed defensive buffs that your allies need at the same time. And this is what I like about Raid. They have some absolutely amazing units because the game has been around and successful for so long. It has a variety of rich characters to choose from, much like that of the Ultimate Death Knight. So use my link in the description or scan this QR code to download Raid Shadow Legends right now, and you can get a free legendary champion on top of 2 free epics as well. And these epics are Galek, who will be with you right at the beginning, and Zargala, who you'll get at level 15. And here are 6 promo codes that you can use to get your choice of a free legendary champion. And these champions include the Green Warden Ruark, Alice the Wanderer, Tuhanarak, Sun Wukong the Monkey King, Tolan Foulbeard, and of course, the Ultimate Death Knight. And these rewards are only available using my link. Not doing this is basically like getting a Divine Orb in a ritual and re-rolling over it without buying it. What type of an idiot would do that, right? But do it quickly, because you can only use these codes for 48 hours after downloading the game using my link. So, what are you waiting for? Come find me and join me on my clan so we can play Raid Shadow Legends together. Thank you so much, Raid Shadow Legends, for sponsoring this video. So the first build we have up here is one that I've featured in the past on the podcast, and that is Awesome Geo's Machine Gun Blood Mage. This uses Ember Fusillade combined with Cast on Ailments and Cast on Crits to cast Frost Darts as a meta skill. It also takes advantage of the Widowhail unique bow combined with a quiver to make it so that the projectiles go extremely fast. And of course, given that these abilities are both spells and projectile skills, you get to take advantage of the projectile bonuses from the quiver as well. And lastly, it also makes use of infusions to make it so that the Ember Fusillades are bouncing much more across the screen, increasing your AoE by a ton. And the best thing is that even though it's a blood mage, it does not use tech rods, meaning that in the next update, this build will probably still be usable and very strong. There is something to note though. This build does use a weapon swap where you cast your Ember Fusillade with a wand offhand, and then you swap to Widowhail before you shoot out the projectiles, which means that you're probably going to be pressing quite a few buttons to let loose your projectiles every single time you attack. So this is definitely a build for those who don't mind pressing a lot of buttons, but really enjoy seeing these flashy explosions on the screen. The next build I want to highlight is from somebody you guys probably all know, but may not have seen the build because it came pretty late into the season, and this is going to be my buddy Kaltorak's Righteous Fire Rowa build. And this is extremely cool. Normally, when you think about rowa riding, you're probably thinking about Lightning Arrow or some sort of projectile skill. But that's not this build. Kaltorak uses Infernal Legion combined with the rowa to make it so that your rowa is doing a ton of fire damage in an AoE around you whenever you are riding on top of it. Normally, when you put Infernal Legion on any minion, it causes that minion to take fire damage over time. But a unique property that exists with rowas when you ride on them is that they don't take damage anymore. So this means that you can have all the upsides of having the rowa out and putting Infernal Legion on it, and none of the downsides of the fact that you need to build in some sort of fire resistance or some sort of regeneration to keep the rowa alive. This means that you get to have the high move speed of the rowa, but also have the interesting playstyle of Righteous Fire going around, killing everything around you and making them burn into dust. Now, this build is really great at AoE clear, but unfortunately single target is probably going to be a little bit lacking. But there likely is a way to fit in Scytha's Barbed Spear to make it so that the burn damage is doubled because it's aggravated. That's something that Kaltorak does not use in his build, and I think that somebody who wants to take this build to the next level could potentially find a way to fit that into the build itself. The third build on this list comes from a Korean player named Sokse, and it is going to be a Caltrops Autobomber Titan. This build does not use any attacks for AoE clear, but instead it uses Trail of Caltrops combined with a ton of Herald explosions to make it so that you are constantly rolling throughout the map and clearing at an extremely high speed. And unlike the usual Herald chaining builds that use Herald of Ice and Herald of Thunder, he actually uses Herald of Blood and Herald of Thunder. This is actually a very extremely interesting and innovative combo, because normally with Herald of Ice, you need to make sure that you have enough chill magnitude to actually freeze and shatter the enemies to proc Herald of Ice. But with Herald of Blood, you can actually go and do that as long as the enemy is bleeding. So this both lowers the amount of gear that you actually need to make this Herald chaining work, on top of making it a lot more consistent, because as long as the enemy is bleeding just a little bit, Herald of Blood will proc and explode. As for single target, of course Trail of Caltrops will add to the damage, but this build mainly uses Forge Hammer in addition to Ancestral Cry to deal a bunch of fire damage over time and burst down the boss extremely quickly. You can see in the clips in the background of this video, he is blowing these bosses up. And this build has an extremely good AoE clear speed on top of having great single target damage. So it's definitely a very versatile build that I would recommend anybody try out. The fourth build on this list is going to be Woolie's Riven Armor Poison Amazon build. This is another build that I've highlighted in the past on the Path to Exile podcast, but I think it is so innovative and amazing. How this build works is that it takes advantage of the unique mechanic from high velocity rounds to apply this debuff called Riven Armor. What this debuff does is that it takes 5% of the damage that you did with the high velocity rounds and stores it into that debuff. And for the next 5 seconds, every single hit on that enemy with the debuff will deal that 5% damage to them as flat, unscalable damage. So this means that if you have an extremely fast attack, you can go and pop a ton of those Riven Armors over that 5-second debuff period. And it doesn't end there. If you use the Splinter of Larada, which makes it so that you can poison enemies and stack those poisons infinitely, that means you can transfer all those Riven Armor stacks into poison stacks and do a load of damage to any enemy that you are trying to kill. And since the damage is unscalable, you can do whatever you want to the attack, which in this case is Spear Field. You can use things like Rapid Attacks 3, Rigwald's Ferocity, which all increase your attack speed but decrease the amount of damage that you do, and none of those negatives to your damage are affected at all because the Riven Armor damage is unscalable. So yeah, this is a very cool skill and takes advantage of one of my favorite uniques, which is the Splinter of Larada. And last but not least, the final build on this list is going to be Doth's Plague Bearer Abyssal Lich. This is another poison build, but unlike other poison builds out there, this build doesn't actually use any poison skill gems like Poison Burst Arrow or Gas Arrow as its main ability. This actually uses the Spirit Gem Plague Bearer for most of its AoE clear and damage. What Plague Bearer normally does is that it stores the poison damage that you deal, and once it hits a certain threshold, it releases all that poison damage in an AoE around you. Normally, Plague Bearer isn't used as a main damage source. It's really used as something additional to the poison skills that you're already using. And as a result, Plague Bearer by itself cannot actually store more Plague Bearer charges. So in most builds, you'll see characters use Poison Burst Arrow or Gas Arrow to build up charges and finally release a big burst of Plague Bearer and then repeat that process over and over again. What's unique about this build is that it actually uses Plague Bearer as its only clear. And you might be wondering, how does it do this? Plague Bearer can't proc off itself. Well, that still is the case. But if you link the skill with Bursting Plague, enemies will now take damage from both Plague Bearer and Bursting Plague. And Bursting Plague can build up Plague Bearer stacks. This means that you're able to use the huge amount of Poison Burst from Plague Bearer as a main clear ability. And if you combine it with the Abyssal Lich's crazy ability to scale AoE with Umbral Souls, then you have an ability that is going to be hitting the entire screen with Plague Bearer, and oftentimes even hitting enemies off screen as well. So yeah, those were my favorite builds of the 3rd Edict update, and while there were plenty more other builds that I've definitely drawn inspiration from or admired from afar, these are the ones that definitely floated up to the top for me for this entire league. Of course, I'm sure you guys have your favorite builds as well, so let me know in the comment section below what builds you really liked this league. And also, if you want to support the channel and let me know that you enjoyed the video, the best way to do it is of course by hitting the sub button. Though, for this video specifically, we are sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends, so if you want to take that extra step and give me even more support, feel free to download the game using my link in the description below. But yeah, thank y'all for hanging out. Thank y'all for watching. I appreciate y'all. I'll be streaming on Twitch every single night on twitch.tv/MeSoShiru. So hopefully I get to see you guys there. But if not, hopefully I'll see y'all on the next video. All right, guys. Peace.